A young boy named Alec was peacefully fishing by the lake one day when a strange man approached him and asked if he wanted to learn magic. I mean, who says no to free magic lessons? So from that day on, Alec began spending his days training under Eldas, an old but sharp-tongued magician. One day, Eldas decided to teach him fire magic, because who doesn't want to shoot fireballs? It was a bit tricky, but after a full day of hard work, and probably a few singed eyebrows, Alec finally got it. He complained about how long it took, but Eldas reminded him that most people would need an entire month to pull off what he did in a single day. Eager to keep going, Alec asked for another lesson, but his teacher just laughed and suggested they take a break and go fishing instead. Alec reluctantly agreed, though he clearly wanted to keep training. Eldas chuckled and said Alec had so much natural talent that even without a teacher, he'd still become an exceptional mage someday. Curious, Alec asked why Eldas decided to train him in the first place, but before he could answer, a fish yanked the line, and the conversation immediately turned into a tug-of-war with dinner. Months passed, and Eldas continued teaching him from thick, confusing magic books that looked more complicated than algebra. Eventually, Alec began understanding everything bit by bit. Then one spring day, Eldas arrived with bad news. He had to leave the capital and couldn't train Alec anymore. Before leaving, he gave his student one last piece of advice. With your talent, you could easily become a court magician someday, but if anyone ever offers you that job, run for your life. It's not worth the trouble. And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving Alec with one final question hanging on his lips. Alec finally asks Eldas why he decided to teach him magic in the first place. The old mage admits it wasn't random. Alec's mother once did him a huge favor, and he wanted to repay that kindness by looking after her son. Years later, Alec is now studying at the Royal Academy, flipping through an old yearbook when he spots a familiar name, Eldas. As expected, the man had been the Academy's top graduate and even became a court magician, but apparently got banished from the kingdom for reasons unknown. That's when Alec, in true anime protagonist fashion, decides the best way to honor his mentor is to become a court magician himself. You know, the exact thing Eldas told him not to do. Fast forward, and guess what? Alec ends up banished, too. Turns out history really does repeat itself. He joined the so-called hero party, made up of the genius crown prince Regulus, the mage Lenny, and the anicaps. While on a mission, Regulus suddenly fires him mid-battle, declaring that all Alec ever does is stand in the back casting boring support spells. Alec tries to explain that maybe, just maybe, those support spells are the reason they're not dead yet, but Regulus, who's apparently allergic to logic, interrupts him. He sneers that someone who can only use support magic is too pathetic for the party. Ironically, Alec never even wanted to join this circus. The prince forced him into it with a royal order. Then, to make things worse, Lenny and Ix join in and call him useless. But let's be real, the real useless one here is Prince Regulus, who literally banned commoners like Alec from carrying weapons just so no one could steal his spotlight. When Alec suggests that everyone in a team should be armed for safety, Regulus looks at him like he's just spoken ancient dragon language. In the end, Alec gets kicked out and left wondering why he ever tried to help these ungrateful fools. Still, because he's too kind for his own good, he leaves behind detailed notes on monster patterns and battle strategies, basically doing Regulus's homework one last time before walking away like a true gentleman. While Alec was on his way to deliver a letter to the castle, the guards suddenly stopped him at the gate. Turns out, he'd been stripped of his title as a court magician, meaning he no longer had permission to even step inside. Talk about getting demoted faster than a failed intern. Just then, Lenny showed up, not to help, of course, but to rub salt in the wound. She'd always hated Alec for being praised at the Magic Academy, especially after he broke the dungeon record that she couldn't. So naturally, she came all the way here just to mock him. When she was done being awful, Alec swallowed his pride and asked her to at least deliver a letter to King Fergus. After all, the king himself had ordered Alec to join Regulus's party, so this message was pretty important. But Lenny, being the jealous menace she is, shredded the letter right in front of him and told the guards to throw him out. Classy move. It had been 4 long years since Alec became a court magician, and despite all his efforts to fix the imperial court, nothing changed. Just as he was wondering what to do next, he heard someone call his name. When he turned around, he saw Yura, an old friend, rushing up to hug him. They sat by the canal catching up, and Alec explained everything that had happened since they last met. Furious, Yura shouted that she hated the kingdom of Galdina, where nobles constantly discriminated against commoners. Alec quickly told her to quiet down before she got herself arrested, but she shrugged it off, no one was around anyway. Despite feeling bad for him, Yura admitted she was actually glad he'd been kicked out of the prince's party, because now he was free to join hers. When she asked him to help clear dungeons with her team, Alec hesitated, wondering if she really wanted someone like him. But Yura smiled, saying she knew better than anyone that he was a total magic powerhouse. Hearing someone finally recognize his worth made Alec's eyes well up. He stood tall, grinned, and told Yura that he'd be honored to join her party, and just like that, our banished mage got a second chance at adventure. The next morning, Alec and Yura set out for the city of Fizzle. Along the way, Alec can't help but recall Eldas's warning about avoiding the Imperial Court, and how life would have been way less miserable if he had actually listened. But hey, hindsight's 20/20ths, right? Meanwhile, back in the capital, Regulus gets word that Alec has officially left town. The prince immediately starts trash-talking him, calling him a sorry excuse for a mage. Turns out, he only ever forced Alec to join the hero party because everyone said he was a prodigy. In truth, Regulus hated having a commoner on the team. Lenny, ever the loyal gossip, chimes in that now they can replace him with someone of pure noble blood, and without that incompetent fool, Regulus will finally get credit for clearing a dungeon faster than anyone else. Yeah, good luck with that. A few days later, Alec and Yura arrive in the city of Fizzle. She enthusiastically explains how amazing this place is, no discrimination, friendly people, and the perfect base for adventurers. Then she suddenly remembers, they still have to get Alec registered at the Adventurers Guild. Unfortunately, the receptionist drops a bomb. Alec doesn't qualify. To explore dungeons past level 30, he needs a special license, and to get that, he must have been registered with the guild for at least 2 years. Yura tries asking for an exception, but the receptionist politely tells her that rules are rules. Turns out, Yura's friend Kesha had already come earlier to ask for permission, but she was apparently so rude to the receptionist that they lost any chance of special treatment. Great teamwork there, Kesha. Yura sighs in disappointment. Her party had already reached the 52nd dungeon floor, but now they can't go any deeper until Alec gets licensed, which will take 2 whole years. Still, instead of sulking, she decides they'll just focus on exploring areas he can access and enjoy their time together. Later that day, the two head into a dungeon and soon find themselves swarmed by red hornets. Yura boosts Alec with enhancement magic, letting him slice down a few, but it barely makes a dent. She's confused, the second floor was never this intense before. Alec, ever the logical one, figures the hornet nest must have been disturbed, causing all the bugs to go berserk. So yeah, just another peaceful day for the newly formed duo. Yura puts up a defensive shield and charges into the hornet swarm, but Rain quickly shouts for her to hang back. It's safer to pick off the bugs one by one. Yura reminds him that he used to be unstoppable before becoming a court magician. Back then, a swarm like this would have been nothing. Now, free from worrying about bruising the prince's ego, Rain can finally go all out. He unleashes a torrent of attack magic, burning dozens of hornets, then regroups with Yura and casts a massive thunderbolt spell that fries the rest. Just when victory seems theirs, a giant earthworm bursts from the ground and snatches Yura, clearly the reason the hornets were acting crazy. Thinking fast, Rain asks if her defense magic is still as strong as it was in the academy. Yura fires back, asking if his attack magic is still as powerful. Confident in each other's skills, Rain summons a roaring fire tornado, engulfing the worm in flames. Yura is caught in it too, but her shields hold firm. Once she's safely on the ground, she grins and tells Rain his magic is just as incredible as before. She can't wait to reunite with the rest of their team and relive old adventures. Before graduation, Rain had been part of a legendary student team: Ornest, the genius warrior; Krasia, the sharpshooting archer; Yura, the brilliant support mage; and Rain, the prodigy attack mage. On graduation day, they broke the all-time dungeon record by clearing the 68th floor, earning top ranks at the academy. As they walked home discussing their futures, Rain suddenly announced he planned to become a court magician instead of joining their adventuring team. His friends were disappointed, especially Ornest, since together they could have formed the strongest party ever. Still, they respected his decision, knowing he must have a good reason. Before they parted ways, Yura made it clear she wasn't giving up on recruiting him, and now, the second chance had arrived. Yura is there to extend an official offer, welcoming Rain to her party. To celebrate, she treats him to a hearty dinner. But Yura isn't great with alcohol. One mug of beer later, and she's wobbling, belligerent, and barely keeping upright. Soon enough, she collapses into her seat and falls asleep. Rain, ever considerate, uses magic to cover her with his jacket so she won't catch a cold. Suddenly, a man appears behind him, commenting that Rain is awfully considerate for an adventurer. Thinking he's just some random drunk, Rain ignores him. That doesn't sit well with the man, who swings his bottle at Rain. The glass shatters on impact, but thanks to a quick magic shield, Rain is unharmed. Before he can react, the man calls him by name, saying he lives up to the rumors, and slides a dungeon pass across the table as a sort of apology for the crude test. Confused, Rain wonders who this mysterious man could be. Then Yora, still slightly drunk, asks, "What's the guildmaster doing here?" Shocked, Rain realizes the man is the guildmaster himself. Leviel stands. He wants to see what the former court magician can do firsthand, inviting Rain to the training center. A little while later, they arrive at the assessment room. Leviel officially introduces himself, and Rain recalls hearing stories of his time in an S-rank party. This won't be easy, but Rain is thrilled. It's the perfect chance to sharpen his skills before stepping into a real dungeon. The match begins. Rain launches a thunderbolt spell, but Leviel rolls out of the way and retaliates with a sharp water slash. Realizing long-range attacks won't work here, Rain decides to go in close and fight hand-to-hand. But Leviel casts enhancement magic, boosting his speed and strength to insane levels. Rain struggles to keep up, and when Leviel finally strikes, even though Rain blocks with a shield, he's still slammed into a wall like a ragdoll. Yora is starting to worry, but Rain gets up and assures her he's fine. The speed of Leviel's earlier attack had caught him off guard, but now he's thinking ahead, and then he starts laughing. Why? Because he realizes he can do more than just dodge. Under the prince's command, Rain had been limited to support and evasion, but as an adventurer, there are no restrictions. He coats his wand in magic, transforming it into a blazing sword, and charges forward. Leviel launches another water splash, but Rain easily slices through it. Leviel is impressed, but he doubts Rain can handle his punches. He enhances himself and charges in again. Rain, however, had already prepared a counter for the dash attack. As soon as Leviel gets within range, he's hit by a full-force thunderbolt spell, leaving him exposed for Rain to strike. Leviel can't help but admire Rain's skill. Now he sees why Yora praises him so often. The test isn't over yet. Leviel activates his ancient artifact, summoning giant gauntlets capable of leaving massive craters with a single punch. Rain realizes that one hit could be devastating, so he treads carefully. He tries another thunderbolt, but it barely slows Leviel, whose artifact allows him to heal over time. The longer the fight drags, the worse Rain's odds become. Determined, Rain repeatedly strikes, but Leviel dodges every attack. Mocking him, Rain asks if he's scared to face him head-on. That gets under Leviel's skin, prompting a wild swing, just the opening Rain needed. A swift slash to the stomach lands, finally doing some damage, but it's only a start. Leviel charges again, and Rain blocks with a shield, which shatters under the sheer force. Luckily, it breaks Leviel's momentum, allowing Rain to strike his chest. Not one to lose. Counters with a hammer fist, creating a massive dust cloud. Yora shakes her head, thinking he's taking things a little too far for a mere test. A hit like that should have knocked Rain out, but somehow he sneaks behind Leviel and lands one final strike. That's all the strength he has left. Leviel snaps, and Rain collapses, unconscious. Yora rushes to his side, while Leviel admits he might have gone a bit overboard and declares Rain the true victor. While Yora tends to him, Ornest shows up, tired of waiting, only to discover Rain had been dueling Leviel. He scolds Leviel for using his ultimate weapon in a friendly spar, but Leviel shrugs, he just got carried away. Now fully convinced, Leviel grants Rain a dungeon pass and anything else he needs, as long as he promises not to sue. Even though the test was unfair, Ornest congratulates Rain on passing. Exhausted, he's carried inside and set on a couch to rest. By now, everyone knows the story of the injustice Rain endured as a court magician, surviving in a castle full of elitist idiots who despised commoners. Clearly, Rain had to work insanely hard to maintain his position. Just then, the receptionist barges in with bad news for the guildmaster. Leviel steps out to handle business, leaving Rain and the others in his office, with strict orders to not touch his alcohol collection. Naturally, Ornest immediately heads for the expensive-looking bottle, planning to annoy Leviel later. He then asks Yora to fill him in on Rain's past as a court mage. The details are wild. Rain was tasked with protecting the prince but wasn't allowed to carry a sword or use magic that might outshine him. On top of that, he had to carry the party's luggage and manage their items. Worst of all, after forcing Rain to only use support magic, the prince had the audacity to call him useless, despite Rain's specialty being attack magic. Ornest can barely wrap his head around it. Yora explains that Alec went out of his way to learn support magic just to appease the prince, even though it wasn't his specialty. Hearing everything the prince put him through, Ornest nearly explodes with rage. As soon as Alec wakes up, Ornest suggests putting the dungeon raid on hold and marching straight to the kingdom to teach that prince a lesson. Alec pats his shoulder and says there's no need. While frustrated, he's not angry enough to confront the prince himself. But Ornest is more than willing to do it on his behalf. Alec reassures him, saying all that matters is going on adventures with friends. Karma will handle the prince anyway, now that no one's there to clean up his messes. Ornest gets a brilliant idea, they'll become the world's greatest adventurers. Eventually, news will reach the castle, and the prince will regret kicking Alec out. When he comes begging, Alec can look him in the eye and throw as many insults as he likes. Alec likes the sound of that and fist bumps Ornest, promising they'll become the strongest party together. Meanwhile, in another room, a member of an S-rank party is being bandaged while recounting her disastrous mission to Leviel. Her teammates are stuck in the dungeon, so she asks him to assemble a rescue team. Leviel calls an all-hands-on-deck meeting, but only those already at the guild are available. He tells everyone they'll form a team to rescue Krista's party trapped on floor 64 of the dungeon. All the adventurers exchange worried glances, they know how deadly that floor is. While the meeting is underway, Krista finds Alec alone in the guild master's office. Judging by his injuries, it's clear he's had a rough time. She asks why he's here instead of attending the meeting. Alec shrugs, saying he didn't want to intrude. Everyone at the meeting is A rank, and he still considers himself an outsider compared to them. Krista raises her hand and uses restoration magic to heal Alec. She then reassures him that no one here would ever call him an outsider. While he was a court magician, Alec had subconsciously learned to never stand out or speak up, afraid of offending the pretentious nobles. Even though things are different now, breaking 4 years of habit overnight isn't easy. Crazia notices his struggle and pats him on the head, saying she's always there if he needs help, which makes Alec feel a lot better. Moments later, Ornest and Yura return. Ornest excitedly tells Alec they have the perfect excuse to head into a dungeon, a place nicknamed the Tank Killer. It earned that name because all healing magic is useless inside, so they must rely entirely on potions. Alec is surprised Crazia agreed to the mission, since healing is her specialty. She reluctantly accepts, mostly because Ornest insisted it's a good starter mission for the team. Alec worries he might not be strong enough to help, but Yura reminds him he's the backbone of the operation. The team literally couldn't do it without his magic. Their goal: reach the party stuck on floor 64. Going the normal route would take too long, but they have a secret weapon, a dungeon core. This rare item, brought back by Krista, lets them skip boss battles up to the floor it was obtained on. They can now clear a path to floor 64, though caution is still necessary. The floor boss is said to be an undead monster, so everyone relies on Alec's attack magic. They instruct him to conserve energy until the big fight. Alec asks if it's really okay for him to sit out most of the minor fighting, and Ornest reassures him it's the best strategy to avoid exhausting his magic before the boss battle. The team teleports to floor 64 and is immediately confronted by a group of skeletons. Ornest rushes ahead, taking out skeletons with his spear like a one-man army. Yura calls after him to slow down so she can cast defense magic, but honestly, with how strong he is, he probably doesn't even need it. Meanwhile, Alec and Crazia move slowly through the dungeon. Alec comments on how surprised he was to find out that Ornest owns an artifact just like Leviel. Crazia explains that it's basically just a spear enchanted with sharpness and unbreaking 3, but for someone like Ornest, that's more than enough. It's getting a bit boring since Ornest is handling all the fodder alone. Alec offers to help, but Ornest waves him off, insisting he's got it under control. As they move further in, Alec suddenly senses something sneaking up behind him. Instinctively, he fires a lightning bolt, startling everyone. He explains that his senses picked up an unseen presence, and Ornest, trusting him, asks Alec to locate it. Alec can't see the creature, but his instincts say it's right there. He conjures a monosaur and strikes, revealing it to be a Grim Reaper. Ornest cheers, impressed that Alec's senses are still sharp. Alec suspects Ornest might have known about the Reaper beforehand, but in reality, Ornest just wanted to let Alec figure it out on his own to boost his confidence, a rare act of trust he never received as a court magician. While Alec is happy for the recognition, he still yells that it doesn't excuse what Ornest did. Crazia and Yura admit they also knew about the invisible monsters but kept quiet, apologizing to Alec. Crazia jokingly tells him to take his anger out on Ornest instead. Alec warns Ornest they'll have a long talk about this later, but first, the mission continues. The party presses deeper and soon encounters an even bigger horde of skeletons. Ornest is thrilled, seeing it as a proper challenge, but Yura reminds him they're on a rescue mission, not a personal battle royale. Ornest, naturally, ignores her and tells everyone to stand back so he can handle it solo. Alec refuses to let him fight alone again, joining the battle while Yura boosts them with enhancement magic. While Alec and Ornest easily clear the skeletons in front of them, they forget that Yura isn't exactly battle-ready, leaving her completely defenseless. Luckily, Crazia swoops in to save her. Alec doesn't want to risk another close call, so he orders everyone to get behind him. He casts a wide-area Thunderbolt spell, clearing the path, and the team continues deeper into the dungeon. Before moving on, Ornest asks Alec why he keeps spamming Lightning Bolt. Back in school, Alec used all sorts of flashy spells, so why the change? Alec reflects on all the times the prince recklessly charged into dungeons, leaving him to clean up the mess. Over time, lightning bolt became his go-to because it's fast and reliable. Suddenly, a terrifying sound echoes from deeper in the dungeon. Yura is sure it's the floor boss, so they need to move fast. They let Ornest sprint ahead, he's the fastest, and with Yura's speed boost, the rest follow. Even after all this time, Alec can't help but marvel at just how absurdly fast Ornest is, especially with magic boosting him. Eventually, they catch up, only to find Ornest casually sitting on the edge of a cliff, watching the chaos below. Alec looks down to see a guy being chased by the floor boss, begging for help. But Ornest doesn't seem too concerned. He explains that the guy is Loki, the support mage of the party they're here to rescue. Most of Loki's teammates are decent, but Loki himself is a nightmare. No one likes him. Loki yells at Ornest, threatening to haunt his dreams if he dies, but Ornest seems unfazed. Just then, Loki trips and falls, and Alec suggests helping. After all, the monster could eat him. But the others shrug. This is just Loki being Loki. The monster steps onto a magic circle embedded in the floor, and Loki flashes a huge. In the next moment, a pillar of fire shoots through the monster's abdomen, and Alec realizes that Loki must have set traps to lead it into trouble. The others confirm it. Despite Loki's annoying personality, the guy is a battlefield genius. The monster keeps stepping on more traps, and Loki laughs at its gullibility. But he eventually runs out of traps, leaving him completely defenseless, and the monster is about to squash him. Just in time, Alec and the others jump in. Ornest drags Loki to safety while the rest stall the monster. When it targets Alec, Yura shields him. Then, the monster turns straight for Ornest and Loki, seeking revenge for all the traps. Ornest runs under the monster and tosses Loki to Krazia. Yura guides Krazia to take him to higher ground for safety. With Ornest free, he unleashes his full strength, asking Yura to pour all her support magic into him. She goes all out, casting every enhancement spell she knows. Ornest charges, dodges an initial strike, and plunges his spear below the monster's eye, but it's not enough to stun it. He's knocked back, crashing to the ground, and Yura shields him just before the monster stomps down. The shield won't hold for long, so she urges Ornest to hurry. From the cliff, Loki finally pays attention. Seeing Alec back in action, he's excited. He's heard the rumors about the legendary genius. Alec begins forming multiple magic circles simultaneously, 20 at once. Even creating 5 would be genius territory, but 20. Now that's a show. The monster charges at Alec to interrupt him, but Ornest blocks its path. Once ready, Alec unleashes a relentless torrent of thunderbolt spells to weaken it, finishing with a concentrated blast. The monster narrowly dodges, so Alec warns everyone to brace for the counterattack. Ornest calls Krazia for cover fire, and she rains arrows down on the monster. This gives Yura enough time to bind it in place. With the monster restrained, Ornest drives his spear straight through its head. The monster survives and tries one final desperate attack on Alec. Big mistake, it turns out Alec had the perfect spell ready for this exact situation. Years ago, Alec's master taught him a special spell, reflection magic, and since then, he's been the only mage capable of pulling it off. When the monster launched its deadly blast, Alec redirected it at full force, causing a massive explosion. After it was burnt to a crisp, Ornest leapt in and delivered the finishing blow, splitting the monster's head in two. With the battle over, Loki strolled over to congratulate everyone. He was especially impressed by Alec's performance, recalling rumors about the former court mage, like how he once defeated a Hydra with a single spell. Alec politely thanked him but clarified, "I'm not actually a court mage anymore." Loki was shocked. Whoever fired someone as talented as you must be idiots. He was grateful for the rescue, but pointed out that the rest of his team were probably still fighting the tougher floor boss. Everyone groaned. There was a second floor boss. Loki explained, when his party arrived, there were 2 floor bosses. They couldn't handle both at once, so his job was to distract the low IQ one while the others dealt with the second. The low IQ boss looked like a knight in black armor, but since the floor is full of undead, it's probably possessed armor. Physical attacks wouldn't do much, meaning Alec's magic was their best shot. Loki handed Alec a cross artifact, impressed by how he could handle himself in close combat. Apparently, Alec had a knack for tricking enemies into seeing him as both the biggest threat and easiest target. Alec was surprised Loki could figure that out from just a few minutes of observation, but strategists are perceptive like that. The artifact was called Schwar, and Loki said Alec could have it, for one condition. He must use 0 magic against the second boss. Krazia nearly choked. Expecting a mage to fight without magic. Crazy. But Loki insisted it would work. His plan relied on trickery and deception. Since the Death Knight likely expects a magical attack, Alec going entirely physical would catch it completely off guard. Anyway, remember that genius prince who fired Alec? Yeah, this is him now, running for his life through a dungeon while 2 oversized caterpillars chase him like he owes them rent. The prince can't believe what's happening, since these monsters used to be easy for him. He yells at Lenny to blast them with magic, but when she tries, nothing happens. Naturally, the prince calls her useless, classic, then decides to handle it himself. He spins dramatically, slashes one, and his sword bounces off. The look on his face says it all. Reality just crit-checked his ego. Lenny in the night panic, grab the prince by the arms, and start sprinting toward the exit as the poor man tries to figure out why his mighty swings suddenly feel like wet noodles. Then it hits him. His decline started right around the time he kicked Alec out of the team. But instead of realizing that Alec was actually carrying him, he convinces himself that Alec must have cursed him out of revenge. After escaping, the prince storms into the royal lab to see the magician Vojan Forners, demanding a curse check. Vojan runs a quick scan and calmly tells him there's no curse. The prince refuses to accept that and insists there's no way he'd ever struggle with clearing the 30th floor unless Alec hexed him. Trying to stay professional, Vojan explains that the 30th floor has an anti-magic field, which disables support magic. So, his weakened state was probably just the result of losing his buffs. The prince immediately scoffs and declares that all support magic is useless coward stuff anyway. Vojan, visibly dying inside, decides not to argue. After all, there's no spell to cure arrogant stupidity. He does, however, find it odd that Alec didn't warn the prince about the anti-magic field. After all, Alec was the legendary student who once reached the 68th floor. The prince laughs that off, saying there's no way a commoner idiot like Alec could have done something so impressive. Vojan wisely keeps his mouth shut. Just then, a guard rushes in to report that the king wants to see the prince about the Alec situation. The prince smirks, thinking daddy's going to back him up, but the moment he enters the room, the king starts telling him a story about Eldas, and it's clear this won't end in applause. The king begins telling the prince a story about Eldas, a court magician he banished years ago, because apparently, being smart and outspoken was a crime back then. Eldas was a noble who dared to stand before the mighty king of Galdana and say, "Hey, maybe stop treating commoners and magicians like dirt or something bad might happen." Naturally, that didn't sit well with his majesty, so out went Eldas, stripped of his noble title and all. But instead of crying in a corner, Eldas enrolled in the Magic Academy, silenced his haters, and graduated as valedictorian. The man basically said, "Watch me thrive." He could have lived the high life after that, but no, he returned to the castle to work again as a court magician. There, he kept nagging the king about equality until he mysteriously disappeared a year later. The king admits he never really took Eldas's words seriously, until now. Lately, he's begun to wonder if the old guy was actually right, which is why he sent the prince to explore the dungeon. He wanted to test whether nobles were truly superior to commoners. Judging by how miserably that went, he's starting to think, maybe not. He declares it's time to change the kingdom's policy and start hiring based on talent, not birth. The prince is absolutely horrified, sputtering that letting commoners stand as equals would be a disgrace to their family name. The king calmly admits that, yes, he's the one who raised his son to think like that, but times change. The prince doubles down, saying hanging around people like Alec only brings misfortune, and he points to his current pathetic state as proof. But before he can continue whining, a guard enters and presents what's left of the book Alec wrote, a detailed guide on clearing the dungeon's 30th floor. The king sighs and explains that Alec made that book especially for Regulus, but thanks to Lenny's little tantrum, it got torn to shreds before anyone could use it. Regulus can't believe what he's hearing, so he quickly fakes being sick and excuses himself before his ego completely implodes. After he leaves, the king turns to Vojan and says that while helping his son might be the hardest job in the kingdom, he'd appreciate it if he tried anyway. Vojan, being the loyal, and probably underpaid, royal magician, promises to do his best. Meanwhile, Regulus is having a full-on meltdown. The poor guy can't handle the idea that Alec might have been the talented one all along, because that would mean he's been the problem this whole time. And that's a reality he just refuses to live in. On the other side of the story, Alec is chatting with Loki, asking why he's forbidden from using magic against the dungeon boss. He knows the boss is immune to physical attacks, so swinging a sword seems kinda pointless. But Loki, ever the mastermind, explains that the goal isn't to beat the boss with a sword, it's to trick it into thinking Alec is just a regular melee fighter. Basically, he wants to play mind games with a monster. Kraja doesn't really get why they need to go through all that drama, so Loki explains that this particular boss isn't some brainless beast, it's as smart as they are. Alec finds that hard to believe, but Loki insists and asks him to just go along with the act until he gives the signal. Reluctantly, Alec agrees. Then Loki turns to Kraja again, saying he needs her help with something a bit dangerous. Since running to his friends would take too long, he plans to use teleportation magic. The team collectively panics, because teleportation is a nationally guarded secret, and just knowing about it could land them in jail, or worse. But with no better option, they all agree to help, and also unanimously decide that if anything goes wrong, they're blaming Loki. While Loki draws the teleportation circle and walks Kraja through the process, Alec chats with Yura to ask if Loki can really be trusted. Yura admits she doesn't like his smug personality, but when things get serious, he's the best person to rely on. She even mentions how, 2 years ago, Loki planned a massive raid on a high-difficulty dungeon, and thanks to his genius strategy, not a single person died. That's all Alec needs to hear. He decides to put his full trust in Loki's plan. When the teleportation circle finally lights up, everyone steps inside. Yura is completely awestruck. It's her first time seeing real teleportation magic. But Loki, ever casual, just tells her this is a budget-friendly version that'll only take them to his chosen destination. Loki warns everyone that he'll be teleporting them right in front of the boss, so they'd better be ready to swing the moment they land. A flash of light later, boom. The whole squad materializes smack in front of Loki's other party members, who are barely hanging on against a towering dark knight. The two look like they've been through a blender, exhausted and out of mana. Luckily, Ornus dives in to relieve them, clashing swords with the knight in a flurry of sparks. While the knight's focused on him, Alec tries to pull a sneaky backstab, but the monster instantly leaps into the air. Apparently, even headless undead knights have great reflexes. It charges both of them at once, giving no room to breathe. Meanwhile, Loki and Kraja rush to pull Raywell and Marbell out of the danger zone. The knight's armor is ridiculously tough, like someone forged it from pure plot armor, and there's clearly no one inside. But Ornus couldn't care less. He rushes in again, feints, and pins the creature's cape to the ground. That gives Alec the perfect opening to slice its head clean off. As the helmet clatters to the floor, Alec hopes that's the end of it. Spoiler, it's not. The headless knight suddenly starts moving again, sprouting creepy tendrils from its neck like a discount horror movie monster. Turns out, it's actually a Dullahan, and the monster they killed earlier was probably its horse. Alec gets distracted by this revelation, because who wouldn't, but when he looks up, surprise. The Dullahan is already airborne, sword raised high. He barely manages to block, but the force nearly shatters his artifact blade. Clearly, the monster had been holding back earlier, because now it's serious mode time. Thankfully, Alec isn't alone. Yura is in the back, spamming buffs like her life depends on it, supercharging Ornus until he's glowing brighter than a Christmas tree. With a mighty yell, Ornus slams the knight, knocking it back and giving Alec a moment to regroup. Unfortunately, the Dullahan doesn't stay down for long. It casually reattaches its head, because why not, and lets out an ear-splitting scream that scrambles everyone's brains. Before Alec can recover, it dropkicks him across the room at Mach speed. Thankfully, Yura manages to throw up a barrier just in time, turning what would have been a wall crater into a soft landing. Yura rushes over to check if Alec is okay. He groans but gives her a thumbs up. Yeah, still alive, barely. Didn't expect that Tin Can to be a martial arts expert. He admits that if Yura hadn't saved him with that barrier, he'd probably be a pancake right now. Catching his breath, Alec calls out to Loki, "How much longer do I have to keep sword dancing with this thing?" Loki, still scribbling magical runes like a madman, yells back, "Just 5 more minutes." Easy for him to say. Alec nearly got turned into monster pate, and he's down to his last 3 potions. Ornus, who's also struggling, shouts, "Quit whining and get back in there." The two dive back into the chaos, doing their best to keep the Dark Knight busy while Loki finishes whatever 4D chess plan he's working on. Finally, after what feels like forever, Loki declares, "Preparation complete," and activates a giant glowing magic circle. He starts laughing like a Saturday morning cartoon villain, which, naturally, makes the Dark Knight panic and charge straight at him. It slashes Loki across the chest, only for everyone to realize it's an illusion. The massive magic circle was a decoy meant to lure the knight into a trap. Ice suddenly spreads beneath its feet as the real Loki, standing smugly atop a nearby tower, watches everything unfold. Meanwhile, Ornus steps on a teleportation rune that Loki and Kraja had set earlier and instantly appears behind the knight, smashing it forward. Marbell drops from above with an overhead strike, but the knight narrowly dodges, just as planned. Another ice trap triggers, freezing its legs and slowing it down. Realizing who's behind all the tricks, the furious knight scales the tower to take Loki out personally. Loki unsheathes a glowing blade, clearly more for style points than survival, while Raywell screams from below, he's not strong enough for that fight. But Loki isn't completely suicidal. He had Yura cast a 7-fold strength enhancement on him beforehand. The problem? His body is definitely not built for this kind of power-up. Every swing looks like it's breaking his own bones. While Loki barely holds his ground, Yura casts a binding spell, trapping the knight, but not before it manages to land one solid hit, sending Loki plummeting off the tower. As he falls, Loki just grins, because of course he does, and yells, "Everything's going according to plan. Alec, finish the job." Taking the cue, Alec raises his hands and summons a dazzling web of magic circles that fill the battle. But Alec's body is at its limit. Sweat pours down his face as the strain of maintaining the massive spell array begins to tear at his stamina. Despite being exhausted, Alec forces himself back on his feet to unleash Thunderbolt acceleration. The spell hits hard, sparks fly everywhere, but the armored knight refuses to go down and is even breaking free from Yora's binding magic. She's desperately trying to hold it back, shouting at Alec to finish the job already. Easy for her to say, his body is about to shut down like a phone at 1% battery. It's the second time today he's had to use such a massive spell, and his mana's running on fumes. But Alec isn't about to quit now. Gritting his teeth, he powers through and completes one of his ultimate spells. A massive lightning dragon roars into existence and zaps the knight into vapor. The battle's over, but so is Alec's stamina. He collapses, muttering something about how having reliable teammates really makes a difference. Yora walks over, smiling, and says it's actually them who rely on him. They couldn't have handled that monster without him. Ornest laughs and reminds Alec about their little bet before the fight. Whoever passes out first has to do a dare. Since Alec technically fainted, he's the loser. But since it happened after the battle, Ornest decides to go easy and gives him a wholesome dare. Stop bottling things up and talk to Ornest, Yora, or Anne-Rose whenever something's bothering him. Then Ryal shows up to thank the group, while Marbell goes for a more physical show of gratitude, planting a kiss on Alec's cheek, much to Yora's absolute horror. When Marbell flirts and asks Alec to go dungeon raiding with her, Yora immediately shuts it down, declaring he's their magician. Finally, the Recloma party's leader, Rue, thanks Alec for saving them and offers to write a recommendation letter, probably the least dramatic thing that's happened all day. Alec looks a bit lost when he hears the word recommendation. So everyone explains that to be promoted to S rank, you need two things: a recommendation from an S rank party and the guild master's approval. The second part shouldn't be a problem, so Rue confidently tells him to leave that to him. Afterward, Alec collects the knight's magic stone, officially marking the Recloma rescue mission as a flawless success. When they return to the guild, the receptionist congratulates him and mentions that he's become quite the talk of the guild lately. Apparently, saving people with giant lightning dragons tends to make headlines. She asks if he's managed to rest after the big battle, but Alec, ever the tough guy, insists he's in perfect shape. Just as he's about to head out, Leviel stops him and says he has a visitor from the kingdom of Galdana. That immediately catches Alec's attention since he thought he'd cut all ties with the kingdom. Still, curiosity wins, and he agrees to meet the visitor, only to find Vogan waiting for him. Out of everyone he used to deal with at the castle, Vogan was one of the few decent people, so Alec greets him politely. But before he can even say, "Long time no see," Vogan jumps straight to the point, asking if Alec was trying to get Prince Regulus killed by not warning him he wasn't ready for dungeon diving. Alec stays calm and simply asks whether Vogan really thinks Regulus would have listened even if he had warned him. Vogan can't argue with that logic but grumbles that he got stuck with a miserable assignment after Alec was fired, one he calls a total waste of his time. When Alec asks if that means Vogan is now Regulus's party magician, Vogan snorts and says, "Magician? Please. I'm basically a royal babysitter at this point." Apparently, after Alec left, Regulus decided to challenge the 30th floor of the dungeon solo, and got wrecked for it. Vogan had hoped to teach him a valuable lesson, but instead, the prince threw a tantrum and demanded that Vogan escort him here so he could confront Alec in person. When Alec realizes this means Regulus is already in the city, specifically, down in the underground training arena, he sighs. Of all the people to run into today, this was not on his bingo card. Still, he figures it's the perfect chance to finally settle things once and for all. Even though Alec could just pretend Regulus doesn't exist and go about his day, he decides to head down to the arena and face him in person, partly out of principle, partly out of curiosity, and maybe just a tiny bit of boredom. As Alec and Vogan make their way down the stairs, Vogan sighs and says the only thing the prince has going for him is his unshakable pride. He then adds that he's never really understood why nobles insist on proving they're superior to commoners. Seems like a full-time job with zero pay, he jokes. When they arrive at the arena, Regulus is already waiting, standing dramatically in the center like he's posing for a painting. To Alec's surprise, the first thing the prince says is that the king plans to reform the way the kingdom is run. Regulus admits he doesn't agree with it but will go along out of respect for his father. For a moment, Alec actually thinks maybe the kid has grown up a little. That hope dies 5 seconds later when Regulus declares that he still can't stand listening to nonsense from commoners like Alec. With a sigh, Alec tells him that if he had just listened to advice earlier, he wouldn't be in such a pathetic situation now. But it's clear Regulus isn't hearing any of it, so Alec decides not to waste another breath. After all, the prince has spent his entire 15 years being told he's better than everyone else. The idea that he might be the problem just doesn't compute. In a desperate attempt to prove he's not a royal disappointment, Regulus draws his weapons and challenges Alec to a duel, demanding Vogan to serve as the witness. Regulus charges in recklessly, forcing Alec to block with his wand. To his surprise, the prince is using daggers this time instead of his usual long sword. Years ago, Alec had actually advised him to start with daggers, since his small frame couldn't handle a long sword properly, advice Regulus immediately ignored back then. Now, it seems he's finally taken it, just several humiliations too late. Unfortunately, swapping weapons doesn't automatically grant skill. Alec sidesteps one of his clumsy attacks, sending Regulus face first into the dirt. It's so pitiful it's almost impressive. Realizing Vogan might have orchestrated this encounter, Alec asks what he told the prince. Vogan smirks and admits all he said was, "If you want to prove Alec isn't stronger than you, then do it with your own hands." Guess Regulus took that literally. At the end of the day, it was Regulus's choice to march in here and challenge Alec. No tricks, no cheap shots, just a good old-fashioned one-on-one duel. Gotta give the guy at least some credit for that. His daggers, being artifacts, pack a decent punch. When Regulus clashes with Alec head-on, he actually manages to shatter his magic shield, which, to be fair, is impressive considering most people can't even scratch it. Unfortunately, that's about the peak of his success. Turns out, Regulus had been training non-stop with those daggers ever since Alec got fired. The sessions taught him a harsh truth, that Alec's support magic was the real reason their party had made it so far in the dungeon. After losing him, Regulus tried tackling the 30th floor over and over again but kept crawling back half-dead each time. Eventually, he stumbled upon some recovered pages from Alec's report, and reading them made his blood boil. Not because they were wrong, but because they were all right. Everything Alec warned him about had come true. That realization hit hard. Regulus finally understood how skilled Alec really was, and how horribly he'd treated him in the past. So, determined to prove himself, Regulus tells Alec to activate his artifact and fight seriously. Alec raises an eyebrow and asks if he's sure about that. After all, they both know who's winning this fight. But Regulus, prideful as ever, refuses to back down. Before their weapons collide, Alec pauses and asks one last question, whether it's true that the king plans to reform the royal court. Regulus confirms it, explaining that his father had been testing the strength of the commoners all along, which is why he sent both of them into the dungeon. If that's the case, it means the king never actually looked down on Alec. Those 4 painful years in the palace weren't for nothing. For once, Alec feels genuinely relieved. Then he looks back at Regulus and says with a grin, "All right, then. Brace yourself, I won't be holding back." He charges forward, power crackling through his artifact. Regulus tries his best to stand tall, though his trembling knees give him away. It's clear he knows he's about to get flattened. But at the last second, Alec changes direction and slams his weapon into the ground beside him instead. The shockwave sends dust flying everywhere, leaving Regulus coughing and confused. He demands to know why Alec spared him after everything, the insults, the arrogance, the years of mockery. Alec just smiles. "Because beating you senseless won't fix the past," he says. "But maybe this will make you start thinking for yourself." Regulus had built his entire identity around the belief that he was superior simply because he was a noble. But now, with that illusion shattered, he's left wondering, if I'm not better than everyone else, then who even am I? He originally came here thinking that dying by Alec's hand would at least let him keep some shred of honor. But instead of hatred or vengeance, all he sees in Alec's eyes is pity. And somehow, that hurts even more. Normally, Alec isn't the type to laugh at someone else's misery, but this whole situation is just too absurd. He came here expecting a dramatic fight to the death, and somehow it's turned into a self-help session. The sheer irony of it all makes him chuckle, and before he knows it, the anger he felt earlier just fades away. Seeing that Alec isn't mad anymore, Regulus bows his head and apologizes for how he treated him. Alec is honestly shocked. He didn't think the proud prince was capable of humility. Still, he gets it. Regulus only acted the way he did because of his upbringing. It doesn't excuse his behavior, but since the kid's finally trying to change, Alec decides to let bygones be bygones and offers his hand. Regulus hesitates, halfway reaching for the handshake before pulling back, probably to protect whatever's left of his noble pride. Then, to everyone's surprise, he takes out the court magician's cloak that once belonged to Alec and apologizes for taking it that day. He even gives him a letter from the king, stating that there's a seat open for him at the royal court if he ever wants to return. Alec raises a brow and asks, "So, is this an order or a request?" Vogan clarifies that it's strictly a request, Alec can refuse if he wants. And he does. Thanks, but no thanks, Alec replies. I've already got the best party I could ask for, I'm not leaving them again. Regulus nods, respecting his choice, but insists that Alec keep the cloak since it rightfully belongs to him. With that, he turns to Vogan and says it's time to go. As the two walk away, Regulus can't help but smile faintly, a sign that both men have finally found a bit of peace and closure.